Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Beruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, 10 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zechut Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, Michael ben Nahid, Esther Bracha bat Chaya, Rabbi Avraham Jamshid ben Tajgol. Today's Amud is also being learned as a Zechut for Aliyat Neshama of Jacqueline Bat Avraham. Her neshama should have an aliyah. This Amud is also being learned for the Zechut Refuah Shelema of one of our own Chevra, Avraham ben Yosef, that should have full recovery. I just had a surgery right now. He should be well and back at Amud Yomi Be'ezrat Hashem soon. And the learning of this week has been dedicated by the Shei family, Kohen family and Dayan families. Should be an ultimate zechut for all their mishpachot. Amen. So we are continuing on the Braita that we started. A Braita through a lot of halachot in 2 lines. The Braita really was brought 12 lines down from the top of the Amud. If you take a look, the Gemara said, the Braita mentions etrog tafuach, saruach, kavush, shaluk, kushi, lavan, menumar, pasul. All of those lists of different etrogim are pasul. Etrog kakadur, if it's round like a ball, is pasul. V'yesh omrim afatiyom, if it's like a Siamese twins, they attach 2 of them side by side. It also is included in that etrog habosir, and this is what we're going to focus on right now. An unripened etrog, which is little and not turned into a full fruit yet, says the Gemara, that would be also pasul according to Rabbi Akiva. But Chachamim disagree. Rabbi Akiva posel, but Chachamim machshirin. So this is what the Braita is going to say. The Gemara is going to discuss it right now. So says the Gemara, etrog habosel, Rabbi Akiva posel, but Chachamim machshirin. This that you have a machloket between Chachamim and Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabba, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon, Amru davar echad. Rabba says this is really a shita that's known to us. The reason of Rabbi Akiva assumes Rabba is because etrog haboser is not considered a peri. It's not considered a fruit, because at some point when the flowers blossom and you have birkat ilanot, and then the fruit starts to appear in a little miniature form, that maybe it's not considered fruit yet. At some point it becomes fruit. So what is exactly that point? So if you have an unripened etrog, says Rabba, perhaps that's why Rabbi Shimon holds that it's not considered a fruit. It may be edible, but it's not considered a fruit that is in its minimal size and stage of being ripened, and therefore it's not considered a pre-etz hadar, because in order for it to be pre-etz hadar, it has to be a peri first to be a pre-etz hadar. So says Rabba, I'll show you that Rabbi Akiva's Talmud, our own Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, also holds like that. Where is that? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva Hada Amaran. This is Rabbi Akiva, is what we just learned. Rabbi Shimon Mahi, which one is Rabbi Shimon's Shita? The Tanya should be really the Tnan. This is the Mishnah Maserot. Rabbi Shimon Poter Eta Etrogim Bekotnan. Rabbi Shimon holds that there is no mitzvah of Maser in etrog when they are small. So this is basically saying etrog haboser is patur from Maser. Why would it be patur from Maser? Says Rabba, isn't it because it is too small and it's not fruits? You take Maser off of fruits. As if this is not a fruit yet, but of course it's going to be patur from Maser. Right? So that sounds like a very good find. It says, I found that Rabbi Shimon and his Rabbi Akiva, they hold exactly the same way. Now, of course, Abaye is going to challenge that, right? Abaye says, not necessarily. And the Gemara is going to stick with this, by the way, according to Rashi's understanding. Amar le Abaye. Abaye says to Rabbi, his Rabbi, his stepfather, he says, Dilma aloi, it's not necessarily true. Ad kaloka Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva over here by us by etrog of arba minim, maybe he didn't say that it's pasul for arba minim because it's not a fruit. Maybe it is a fruit. Maybe it is edible. And hence it is a fruit. You know why it is pasul? Because not hadar. It says it's hadar. A little tiny etrog is not hadar. It's not glorified. It's not beautiful. And therefore it's pasul. It's not that it's not a fruit. Maybe it is a fruit. Maybe it is edible. And therefore it's chayav b'maser. But not every fruit is chayav b'maser. It's going to be kasher for arba minim. It has to be beautiful. It has to be fantastic. And this is not fantastic. It's not considered hadar, and therefore it's not good. Aval hatam by maserot karabaran sevira le. Rabbi Akiva maybe actually holds a karabaran over there. The machloket Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. Rabbi Akiva maybe would take the side of Rabbanan and say no, etrog haboser is chayav b'maser because it's edible, and it's edible. It's chayav. It's considered fruit. Inami. Or I could say the other way around, that Rabbi Shimon does not agree with Rabbi Akiva. Haso. Ad kal no kama Rabbi Shimon hatam. Over there, the Rabbi Shimon says etrog haboser is patur from maser. Why would it be patur from maser? Not because it's not considered fruit. Maybe it is considered fruit, and hence it would be proper for your arba minim to be taken as your etrog of the arba minim. So why in the world would it be patur from maser? I'll tell you, simple. Radichtiv aser ta'aser. Over there by maserot, the pasuk says aser ta'aser. You should give maser from what? Et kol tevuat zaracha. The produce of your zera, of the seeds, which coming to say kederech shebnei adam motzin lezriya. The pasuk is coming to indicate that not every little fruit is going to be hayab b'maser. It has to be ripened and developed and matured in a way that now you can take the seed and plant them. Now, if you have an unripened, undeveloped fruit, the zera is not developed. If you plant it, nothing is going to grow. It has to be ripened. So therefore, Rabbi Shimon says, well, this could be a fruit, but it's not hayab b'maser. So what would Rabbi Shimon say in the machloket of Rabbi Akiva over here by Chag HaSukkot? He would disagree with Rabbi Akiva. He says, even though the etrog haboser is patur from maaser, it still could be kasher for arba minim. So therefore, Abaye says, who told you, Rabbi, with all due respect, love you, but who says that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon are saying the same thing? Maybe none of them agrees with the other one. Not only they're not aligned, but none of them agrees even with the other one maybe. Because each one of them has a reason to be very mutually exclusive in their own shita. So says the Gemara, Aval hacha kerabanan sevira le. Maybe over here Rabbi Shimon would argue with Rabbi Akiva and hold like Chachamim that hold that this etrog haboser is kasher for arba minim, and the Gemara ends. This is something interesting. Sometimes the Gemara does. Vetu lo midi. Rashi learns that this push of the Gemara pushing away Abaye's argument is the maskara of the Gemara, that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon indeed do not agree with each other. It's not, certainly not the same shita. Now, the Gemara said in that braita that we just learned that gidelo bedefus v'asao kemin beria. If you grew the etrog in a defus, in a frame, in a mold, right, to take the shape of the mold, if the shape is like bria acheret, like a completely different creature, then it's pasul. You have this things in the Far East. They have it's a box. It comes like a cube, a fruit like a cube. You have a watermelon. It's a cube watermelon. Right? You can slice it nicely. So if you have a cubic etrog, that does not look like a etrog. It looks like a bria acheret. If you have such a thing, says the Gemara, pasul. Even though that it's etrog, it's hadar, there's no bleitlach, there's nothing on it, it's clean, nice, beautiful, still would be pasul because it does not look like a etrog. Amar Rava. Rava said, lo shanu ela kemin bria acheret. It's only if it looks like bria acheret. Avar kebriato kasher. But if it's like briato, it's kasher. Now, what's the obvious problem with this Rava? Obvious problem. Rava is an Amora. But the Braita said it's only when it's Kibriyato. But Kibriya Acheret is Pasul. Right? And Rava said exactly the same thing as the Braita. Chazaku Baruch. Like we knew, the Braita said it already. What is Rava, who's an Amora, coming to add? Fraktik Mar Peshita, it's Pashut. Kimin Briya Acheret Tenan. Or Tanya, it has to be. We learned in the Braita, Kimin Briya Acheret. So what are you adding exactly? What's the note? Lo tzricha de avida dapi dapi. We're talking about the case that the lines on the etrog, right, the horizontal lines that are coming from the top, from the okis to the pitom, they are like lines that are boards and boards. It has like the wrinkles that are still considered like briyato shel etrog. And that's the chidush. The chidush is, it's not just if it's straight up, but even if it has bumps, right, it becomes like, elevations and depressions, that is lines, created lines like boards on the surface of the etrog, that is considered kibriyato. Nowadays, many people actually like the bumps and consider the hidur for them, depending on what type of bumps you have, if it's aligned and if it's symmetrical. So that the Gemara says is the chidush of Rava. As long as the shape is kibriyato shel etrog, the bumps on the shape does not make that much of a difference. It doesn't have to be straight. It could have these lines, and it would be still considered a briyato shel etrog. At Itbar, the Gemara says, etrog shenakvuhu achbarim. If you have an etrog that some mice took a bite of it, so this is bitten into, right? You left it, and you come back, the achbarim have taken a little taste of it. So is that kasher or pasul? So Amar Rav enze hadar. Rav said this is not considered it's hadar, it's not hadar, and therefore it's pasul. Gemara says, is that correct? How is that possible when I know Behar Rab Chanina mat bilba v'nafikba? Rabbi Chanina would take a bite into his etrog and then shake it as his arba minim. Perhaps he wanted to prove that that's kasher, right? He wanted to show his talmidim. This fellow in New York, 1 year, his whole chabura learned Sukkah b'iyun for a whole year. So he created a very creative sukkah that used all of the kulas that you could have in Sukkah arba minim. Every single kula that you could have, the good asik and good achit, and everything that is halachically possible. The tour of this sukkah was an entire shiur, Chazara and Masechet Succah. You come in and you see every single thing with the shelet, with the this, and that was like a very, very creative idea. So if maybe he wanted to show his talmidim what is kasher, what is not, he would actually dip it into some charein and have a little bite, and then do his arba minim and nanuim, right? So that's the maaseh of Rabbi Chanina. Gemara says, wait a second, we know that Rabbi Chanina did this. So if you tell me an achbar, a mouse took a bite in it, is pasul, what's the difference if the achbar took a bite or Rabbi Chanina took a bite? At the end of the day, the etrog should be either kasher or pasul. So how do you align these two things together, says Gemara? Or Rabbi Chanina kashya matnitin. How do we reconcile, forget about the achbar for a second, how do you deal with the story of Rabbi Chanina when we have the matnitin, when we have our Braita, our Mishnah, right? So says the Gemara, Bishlama matnitin le Rabbi Chanina lo kasha. So it's not really a question of Rabbi Chanina. The question really lies with Rav. Remember, we're trying to reconcile Rav. Rav said if you have a etrog that an achbar bit into it, it's not hadar, therefore it's pasul. That's what he said. Rabbi Chanina doesn't say why it's pasul or kasher. Gemara just says a story that Rabbi Chanina used to do this, and that indicates obviously that's kasher. Why would it be pasul or why it is kasher? It's not discussed. So says Gemara, therefore, I have no problem explaining the story of Rabbi Chanina. Because you know why Rabbi Chanina held it's kasher? Very simple. It says, Ulkachtem lachem beyom harishon. We learned from this that lachem, the fact that the etrog has to belong to you, can't be etrog shaul, can't be etrog gazul, that is a problem only on the first day because it has to be yours on the first day, right? Second day, you can borrow somebody else's etrog and use. First day has to be yours. And the fact that an etrog has to be complete, also we learned it from ulkachtem, which is, it has to be lekicha tama, it has to be a full lekicha. The etrog cannot be chaser, right? So therefore, just like lachem is only a thing of the first day, ulkachtem, that it has to be a lekicha tama, also is only on the first day of Sukkot. So I could tell you that the story of Rabbi Hanina happened when? The second day, the third day, whatever, just not the first day. So he bit into it, and he did it. Chazaku Baruch. That's exactly what he wanted to teach. He wanted to teach that ulkachtem has to be lekicha tama, only the first day. Second day, you could literally bite into it and then take it, and it's kasher. But the problem lies still with Rav, because the achbar, the mouse that took a bite into it, Rav said it's a problem of what? Hadar. Last we checked, the problem of Hadar is throughout the entire Chag HaSukkot. Remember, we had a whole rate bite on this, a long discussion. This is a problem, because when exactly it is kasher? Amar Harav, says the Gemara, Shani Achbarim de Meisi. Says no, the problem is, it's not necessarily a problem of Hadar because it's missing a piece. The chaser is not the problem. The problem is the way the chaser happened. If it's something that's a shiraim of an achbar eating into it, that's already very disrespectful. You're taking for a mitzvah something that the achbar bit into. You know, there's in the halachot of Shemirat HaNefesh, it's brought as one of the sgulot, not to forget, not to eat anything leftover of anything that the achbar has bit into. Right? The whole question if squirrels are considered mishpachat achbarim, because this is very common in Los Angeles. Oh, well, really the rats are pretty common as well. If they have bit into something, can you eat the rest of it? Right? Cut off a little piece and eat the rest of it. Right? That's a segula for forgetting things. Right? Forgetting your learnings. Many people are careful not to do that. Many people are careful. You find a loaf of bread, they bit into it, just trash the whole thing. Right? Now you have to ask a question, when it's applicable, when it's not applicable. But the maaseh, it's not considered a kavod, it's not considered respectful to take for mitzvah something that an achbar has bit into. If Rabbi Hanina bit into it, that's lechatchila, it's shiraim of the Rebbe. It's, people would pay, the Hasidim would pay a lot of money for that. But achbar is disrespectful, therefore it's not considered something that you want to do. Fine. Ikadamri, there are those who say the whole thing upside down, backwards. They start from the fact that Amar Rav, Ze Hadar, Rav said that it's kasher to use a etrog that was bit into. Because you see, Rav Chanina used to do it. He used to bite into it and then use it as arba minim. And Mar says, wait a second, Rav Chanina kasha matitin. How do you reconcile Rav Chanina with matitin? Mar says, lo kasha, kam b'yom tov rishon, kam b'yom tov sheni. It's talking about Yom Tov Sheni, and that's why it's kasher. And that by itself would redefine what Rav said, that bit into would not be kasher on the first day because of ulkachtem lekichatama, but it would be kasher on the second day. Fine. Now we discuss etrog katan, small etrog. When we mentioned the machloket tanaim of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir holds the minimum shiur of etrog is a walnut, kegoz. And Rabbi Yehuda holds the minimum shiur is kabetza. So the Gemara says, well, this is also not the only time that they have discussed a minimum shiur of something. This is consistent with the shita of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda elsewhere of what they consider a shiur hara'ui for something that's going to be carried, in this case, on Shabbat. So what is the case? Says the Gemara. Amar Rafram bar Papam. Kemachloket kan, kach machloket ba'avanim mekurzalot. Just like you have machloket Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and the minimum shiur of etrog, you also have machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir by the shiur of the stones you could take on Shabbat with yourself into the bathroom. Back in the day, before Pampers came around, before you had wipes and toilet papers and so on, when you're outside, how did they wipe themselves? They had, sharp and smooth stones. Something that's not going to scratch and bruise your body, but at the same time would be, with the edge that could wipe clean the tsoah off of the body. So that's avalim mekurzalot. The Tanya, we learned the Braita. B'Shabbat given avalim mekurzalot, mutar la'achnis lebet hakiseh. You could take 3 of these stones into bet hakiseh. V'kama shiuran. What is the shiur that the size of these avanim that you could take? Rabbi Meir Omer ke'egoz. Rabbi Meir says the size of a walnut, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says kabetzas. This is like a sign for you to remember who says what. When you know that this is like a shas machloket, you'll remember this way. Each one of them that you remember, will help you remember the other one. It's kind of like a sign to remember which one is which. Now the Gemara says uba gadol. Kedesh Yochaz, this was also a machloket. Tanaim, is it that you could take 2 of them in one hand, or you could take 1 in 2 hands? Rabbi Yehuda, right? So says the Gemara, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Maaseh Rabbi Akiva. This time is Rabbi Yossi who is bringing a story, right? Not Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yossi, Maaseh Rabbi Akiva. None other than Rabbi Akiva himself once came on Chag HaSukkot and he brought to showcase his etrog, and when he came to Bet Knesset, etrogo al ktefo. He was carrying the etrog not even in 2 hands. It was so big that he had it on his back. He had it on his shoulders, right? He was bringing it. It was too heavy to be carried outside with 2 hands, so he had it like leaning on his shoulder. He brought it to the Bet Midrash. So that's obviously a raya that you don't need 2 of them fitting in your one hand. It certainly would be a raya that you could have 1 in 2 hands, and that still would be kasher. Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda tells him, says, well, misham raya. That's a raya. Avhem amru. They told him when he came to Bet Midrash to showcase his etrog, Chachamim told him, Amru lo, enze hadar. It's not considered hadar. This massive etrog that you have is not considered hadar, and therefore it would be pasul. Says the Mishnah. En ogdin et alulav ela bemino divrei Rabbi Yehuda. When you want to, again, we had this discussion, machloket haraim, if lulav sarich eged or lulav en sarich eged. Right? Rabbi Yehuda learned that lulav needs to be tied together. The lulav and hadas and arava need to be tied together. And here the Mishnah says that when you want to tie the lulav together, it has to be bemino. It has to be with its kind. The Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, afilu bechut b'meshicha. It could even be with a string. It doesn't have to be mino shel lulav, right? Now the Gemara is going to explain this. Both of the shitos of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Amar Rabbi Meir, Maaseh b'anshi Yerushalayim. It's the story of the people in Yerushalayim. Shay ogdin et lulavehen begimoniot shel zahav. They wanted to showcase the love and the respect that they had. They wanted to show how much respect they had for the mitzvah, so they would tie the lulav with gold strings, right? So Rabbi Meir now is bringing a maaseh against Rabbi Yehuda over here, right? So you see that it doesn't have to be bemino; it could be bechute zahav kefufin kegimon, which Rashi says it comes from the language of halachov ka'agmon. It means it's a bent and folded string. So says the Gemara, This is the Mishnah rather. Amrula, Bemino ayu ogdinoto milamata. It says no, that's not true. They were tying it with the strings of lulav from the bottom, and then on top of it they would wrap these golden strings just for beauty, and that's why it was kasher. So the story that you're bringing is not a raya against Rabbi Yehuda. You still have to have agida. The igud has to be bemino. Says Rashi. Bemino ogdinoto milemata leshem mitzvat eged vezel lenoi be'alma. They will put it on top as a beautifying factor, and that's why perhaps it's not considered a hefsek, is not considered a chatzitza, but lemaaseh it's not the mitzvah of eged. The mitzvah of eged, it will be done only through the same type as the arba minim, aka the way we do it nowadays, with a chut of the string made from the leaf of lulav. So that basically is the Mishnah. We're not going to start the Gemara right now because it's going to get into a whole sugya by itself, which Bezrat Hashem will continue tomorrow morning. Chazak Baruch.